Evening. I am Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you to an extraordinary council meeting of 28th of February 2023. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to elders past, present and future. Today we are meeting on the lands of the Tangarang peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. We welcome the people in our public gallery, but there are none, so we don't do that. We also welcome those joining us online through our live stream via our website. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will, what will we do?
The gallery is still open, so we can still continue on. Yep.
As the gallery is open, even though we don't have anyone attending, we will continue the meeting given the public gallery is open. So voting by councillors at tonight's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor or an officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter shall commence until they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. CEO Solomon, are there any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yes, there are 2 apologies for this evening's meetings. We've received apologies from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Paul Murray, and we have received an apology from Councillor Reg Dickinson. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors and officers, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our governance rules and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to declare an interest for item 6.1, mid-year budget review 2022-2023, as I am the caravan park leasee that's mentioned in there, but I do not consider there to be a conflict as the mid-year review is not seeking any additional funds to be expended by council, but figures are being adjusted based on new income estimates, which is purely reinvesting the amount received by council and therefore cost neutral to council.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Are there any further disclosures to be made? No? Okay, councillors. So we have first item on the agenda is the notice of rescission. Councillors, the rescission motion is outlined on page 4 of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion on page 4 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysberg?
I want to start tonight by speaking about our role as councillors. We represent the interests of the community when making decisions. We participate in strategic objectives of council, such as developing the council plan and setting the budget. Setting budgets can be a bit like gazing into a crystal ball. We really have no idea what is ahead of us, and that was the case in this financial year. It is our job to ensure council is meeting the needs of our community and that we are financially viable. If tonight's rescission motion is not passed, we fail in these duties. It feels like some of you might have forgotten, but the past 6 to 8 months have been significantly challenging. Inflation is rising, interest rates are rising, costs right across the board are rising. For our council, this has generated an extra $4.5 million in our project delivery. In October 2022, our region was hit by a major flood. This led to an extra $30,000 of emergency staffing costs for after hours, and the damage bill for flood for roads and infrastructure will be in the tens of millions of dollars. This was highlighted by Director Bray last week. We are grateful for the $1.5 million in flood recovery that the government has awarded us, but this doesn't go far enough. Our community has told us time and time again that we must make roads a priority, which is why the roads contracts before us tonight need to be approved. I'm confident that the community will understand that some projects will need to be delayed in order to prioritise the roads. We know that some of our roads are so badly damaged that they are not safe to drive on without significant speed reductions. To ensure our roads, bridges and drains are repaired and upgraded to achieve better flood resilience, officers have diverted funds from existing capital works program. And I know that this wasn't an easy task. Council and officers take great pride in delivering projects for the community's benefit, but we also know, and our community is telling us, that we need to focus on roads. This work by officers to divert funding will go a small way to helping us achieve this while we continue to advocate to state and federal government for funding. If tonight's rescission motion is not passed, we'll have to revert to our adopted budget, and this means funding these roads will be an additional cost to council or it just won't occur. And it will also mean that we are not financially sustainable. The mid-year review presents council with an opportunity to not only complete these works for our community and that they are calling for, but to put us in a strong financial position. As a council, I will again say that our role is to represent the community's interests, and I can't see how a financially unviable council achieves this. I urge my fellow councillors to ensure that we continue to be financially sustainable now and into the future. So please endorse tonight's rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
I reserve my right.
Certainly, Councillor Rayburn. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor.
Please. Thank you, through Mayor Binks. Concur with Councillor Hayes-Burke's comments tonight regarding what our role is, and representing the best interests of our communities always should be the forefront of our mind. And in doing that, that includes having a look at mid-year budget reviews, etc. And it would be in our duty to make sure that we're reading them and understanding them to the best of our ability. It's the first time since me being elected to council that I've seen or read a mid-year budget review that had the words endorse on it. And so I spoke on the night, and I spoke on the night to it, so I really don't want to have to repeat myself, about why I felt the need to definitely note the mid-year budget report, but to delay the endorsing it until the Risk and Audit Committee had first reviewed it. And I think I made it clear on the night, but I wasn't looking to them to direct any council into any direction with it, but listen to their expertise as an advisory committee that they are. But after an informal meeting with some members of the Audit and Risk Committee today, I'm now satisfied that I can now proceed with the recommendation, at this stage, the rescission, and that I thank the officers who organised that informal meeting. It was very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak?
No, that's okay. I spoke last week and Councillor Hayes-Burke summed up everything I wanted to say tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like your right to reply?
I'm just glad that the members of the Audit and Risk Committee today could satisfy the needs of council to have that extra endorsement. So, yes, I'm glad that there's across the board that there's approval for the tonight's rescission motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands, all those in favour of the rescission, notice of rescission, please? And against?
Could I please call a division?
Certainly.
Thanks.
You can, Councillor Horrigan. So can I see show of hands, all those in favour, please? So Councillor Horrigan, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Rayburn and Councillor Hayes-Burke and Councillor Binks. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we now move to page 9 of the agenda, item 6.1, mid-year budget review 2023 mid-year budget review 2022 to 2023. Director Bray, can we have a brief summary of the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I won't go through, excuse my voice, I'm losing it. I won't go through the lengthy summary that I presented last week, but in preparing this mid-year review, we've been very cognizant of the fact that we have some really significant factors at play, particularly in terms of materials and services costs. And I think Councillor Haysberg has already referred to the fact that across the organisation, we've incurred $4.5 million increase just in goods and services and materials that were unexpected. And obviously the impacts of the flood event has not only diverted staff resources, but also means that we can't deliver the capital works project and program that we had endorsed for the 2022-23 budget back in June. So the draft budget, or the mid-year review that's in front of you tonight, tries to balance the books, if you like, and tries to also address the challenges that we have in future years, still around the high inflation levels, and tries to put council in a position where we still have adequate liquidity, and that all of our strategic indicators that we have to report to the state government and also to VARGO are within tolerance and keep us in a fairly healthy position, despite the fact that we're in really challenging circumstances. So, councillors, there is a recommendation on page 10 that council note and endorse the mid-year review, and the word endorse, just to clarify, is that there are items in the mid-year budget that weren't part of the original endorsed budget that was adopted by council in June, and therefore we need the endorsement of council to approve budgets for those additional expenses, such as the electoral representation review, so that we can actually meet those expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of either Director Bray? We also have Chief Financial Officer Upal with us this evening, and of course the CEO. So if there's any questions of clarification from councillors, Councillor Haysberg.
Just for the benefit of the community and for councillors, I just have a few questions. Should I direct those to Upal? Yes, okay.
Direct them to me and then we'll...
All right, thanks, Director Bray. Can you please explain where the $7 million saving in capital works has been directed to from the adopted budget?
Thank you. I'll handle that one, and if Upal needs to back me up, he certainly can. So in terms of the $7 million, so 1.7 of those were cost escalations that have been encountered in existing projects. So we have had quite a few items come up to council where we've had to vary existing contracts because the costs have been escalating. So around 1.7 million of that 7 million is just cost escalations for existing projects. We also have some savings that we're trying to put in to make sure that we have adequate liquidity of around 1.2 million. And then the rest of the balance of that 7 million are projects that are still on the books but are just either pushed out to next year or future years when we have the capacity to deliver them, given that there's a focus on that flood recovery work.
Okay, thanks for that. So given that costs have gone up ridiculously, in relation to roads, do you have an idea about what the increase in road cost expenditure would have been just in the last sort of 6 to 8 months? Sort of what percentage?
Yeah, so look, in terms of actually maintaining the road, so these aren't big capital works to reseal and do big projects, but in terms of the actual maintenance, if we look at the drainage and culverts and roads, it's about $200,000 additional compared to this time last year. So if you looked at the budget this time last year, we're about $500,000 in terms of maintenance on roads and drains, and now we're about 739 or thereabouts.
Just halfway through the year.
Yeah.
And thanks. And lastly, I note that in this budget, it looks like we have $13 million in cash. This seems like a lot, but I was hoping you'd please just explain that figure?
So just to explain it, in terms of what we need to be keep our liquidity up and to actually be able to pay our bills, we know we need around $5 million in the bank just to cover costs. So it has certainly is an increase through the mid-year review, but part of that is around $4.7 million of that was an advance grant from the Victorian Grants Commission. So they've actually advanced us part of our grant allocation for the next financial year. So they brought that forward to this financial year. So we don't get more grants. It's just sort of a down payment, if you like, on the grant that we'll get for next year. So that's sort of a fairly big chunk of it. We've also got another $1.5 million in flood grants as well that has increased that cash balance. We've obviously got the $1 million or so in the savings of capital works that I talked about before. But again, it's when we look at the savings, if you look at future years, that also goes down quite markedly next year, and then in future years down to around that $5 million. So it's only this high at the moment, but it needs to be because all of that the capital expenditure is allocated to future projects as well. So we need that money in the bank.
So when you say the grants have been awarded earlier, is that capital grants or operating grants?
It's just general grants, yeah.
Okay.
From the Victorian Grants Commission.
Thank you. For me.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Are there any further questions or clarification for the officer? No? Okay, councillors, given there's no further questions or clarification, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't me, sorry. I, for some reason, thought that the Mayor said your name. Yes, can I please pass the recommendation on page 10?
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't think I need to add anything. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Reserve my right, thanks.
Certainly, Councillor Haysbert. Would any Councillor Rayburn. Certainly, Councillor Rayburn, you may reserve your right. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rayburn?
No, thanks.
No. Okay, Councillor Haysbert, you don't want your right of reply, seeing as there's very little to reply to. Councillors, given the case, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 6.2 of the agenda, page 18, contract variation, contract number 2021-65, Harris Creek and Bonnie Doon Roads intersection realignment. Director Adamek, can we have a brief summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks, and through you, Mayor. Harris Creek and Bonnie Doon Roads intersection realignment project formed a part of Council's 2021 Capital Works program, which was carried forward to 22 and subsequently 22-23. The primary objective of the project was to improve road safety at the intersection. At the April 2021 Council meeting, Council approved to award contract number 2021-65 for Harris Creek and Bonnie Doon Road intersection realignment to Wrights Earth Moving Proprietary Limited after emerging as the preferred tenderer following a competitive tender process. The lump sum contract was awarded to the contractor for a lump sum of $352,516.30. As the execution of the work delayed due to tree permit issues, Council agreed to revise the contract price to $423,204.94. Budget allocation was adjusted to suit this amount in the financial year. Contract commenced in December 2022. Contractors proceeded to remove the existing road. There was a significant amount of soft ground treatment emerged as the works progressed. These latent conditions are due to natural spring that is located underneath the pavement area to be constructed. It is essential to perform proper treatment to build up the new road pavement to achieve accepted durability, thereby providing best value for the Shire assets. In addition, the surrounding community requested additional bus bay to be constructed. The project facility school but pick up at the intersection to ensure safety for the children accessing the bus. These latent conditions and additional requirements result in a cost increase of $113,995.20, which is a 26.94 increase in contract value revised recently. The new contract value of the project would be $537,214. Should the variation be approved, given the topography of the site, there's further possibility that more soft saturated ground will be discovered when the remaining work area is excavated for construction. This will yield potential variations amounting up to about $110,000 on current expenditure to treat and complete the project as the standards. There is a recommendation on page 19 for your consideration.
Thank you, Director Adamek. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the officer? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Director. Has this project been started already?
Yes, it has. Yes.
Are there any further questions or clarification of the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as printed on page 19 be accepted by Council.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rayburn?
Yes, thanks. This works was there to improve the intersection of Bonnie Doon Road and Harris Creek Road from being a Y intersection to a T intersection. There was a lot of debate when we first came up to council about removal of trees and ice line of sight, which did take a long time to solve. But this upgrade of what's happened now is nothing that I believe any engineer would be able to see underground 20 feet when they start digging that ground up. When I went up there and had a look at it personally, it's just water coming out of a spring. Now, I don't know if it's because it's the weather we've had in the last 3 years or it's a long-term spring, but it's something which I don't believe the engineer department or anyone could have cited would happen happen now or even in the future. And I understand where the director's coming from in the fact that up there, some areas the soil is quite hard and rocky, and other areas it's very soft. So there could be other areas where variation may be required, and I support that in trying to get this road back up to scratch so our community can reutilise it.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's also great that that officers have listened to the community and their needs for upgrading the bus stop to make that safer in the area. So thanks for having the foresight to do that and listening to the community needs.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. So we now move to page 23 of the agenda, item 6.3, tender for contract number 20-23-33, provision of flood damage rectification, sealed road works patching with optional panel of suppliers provisions. Director Adamek, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bings, and through you, Mayor. Council has undertaken a competitive tender process for the rectification of the flood damage to our sealed road network caused by the October 2022 flood event. as a component of the flood recovery program to be funded through the National Disaster Funding Assistance, the Department of Transport and Planning assessors submitted the flood defects for funding approval on behalf of Emergency Management Victoria. Since the event, Council have had regular updated meetings with the assessor and received provisional approval to commence immediate reconstruction works. Council met the required compliance obligations under the Local Government Act and the Strathbogie procurement policy by undertaking formal public requests for the tender. The tender was released on Tender Search via the Council website on 2nd of December 2022. The tender was advertised on Saturday in the Saturday's Age newspaper, statewide reach, on 3rd of December 2022, Shepparton News and Benalla in the week following. By the close of tender at 4 p.m. on 20th January, there were 2 submissions that had been received. There is a recommendation for your consideration on page 23.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation as stated on page 23 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Do I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think we should just note here that we're really ahead of the game of other councillors in getting these contracts awarded because we've done a huge amount of assessment on the roads. I know councillors and officers have been working on this furiously for the past 4 months since the flooding. So I think it's really great that we can finally award this set of tenders.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 27 of the agenda tonight. Item 6.4, tender for contract number 22 to 23-34, provision of flood damage rectification, unsealed roadworks with optional panel of supplier provisions. Director Adamak, can we have a summary of the report, please?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor. Council has undertaken a competitive tender process for the rectification of the flood damage to our unsealed road network, which was caused in 2022 flood event. Council met the required compliance obligations under the Local Government Act 2020 and Strathbogie procurement policy by undertaking a formal public request for tender. The tender was released on Tender Search once again via the council website on the 2nd of December 2022. The tender was advertised in Saturday's Age newspaper, statewide reach again on the 3rd of December 2022, Shepparton News and Benalla Ensign. In the week following, in the following release, by the close of tender, 4 p.m. on 20th of January 2023, 5 submissions had been received. There is a recommendation for your consideration on page 27.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification of the officer? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as printed on page 127 be recommended to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rayburn?
Yes, a lot of people in our community will be very happy that we are now formally putting this tender out, signing it, so we can get the dirt roads fixed everywhere, because so many of our farming community have had trouble in the last 4 months getting into their properties, and it's going to be great once we get this going. They're really magnificent. Thank you,
Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And to declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. CEO Salomon, is there any confidential business to conduct this evening?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, no, there is no confidential business this evening.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. So the next ordinary meeting of the Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, the 21st of March 2023 at the Euroa Community Conference Centre, commencing at 6 p.m. There being no further business, I declare that this meeting is closed at 6:30 p.m. Thank you, councillors, audience, officers, and good night.